Welcome to the Video Creators Podcast. We help YouTube creators grow their audience and business with next-level tactics and strategies. Want to accelerate your channel's momentum, be more profitable, and change the lives of more people than ever before? You're in the right place. The Video Creators team has over a decade of experience providing YouTube strategy for brands like Disney, Warner Brothers, HBO, and even YouTube themselves. So far, our team is responsible for helping clients generate over 17 billion views on YouTube. And now, to help you, here's Tim, Lennon, and Delana.
Hello, creators. How are you guys? Great to see you again for another Video Creators Podcast episode, where every week we come at you with something that we think is going to help you grow your YouTube audience, grow your channel, and ultimately the business around it that's reaching people and changing their lives. And one of the ways that we typically do that on YouTube is by making videos, obviously, but people have been using it for podcasting for a long time, not really effectively. In fact, it's been something that in the past we here at Video Creators have sometimes for some people, kind of depends, but not necessarily a strategy that we would preach for everybody to do. But YouTube's making some interesting moves this past year in terms of podcasting on its platform. A quick little history is years ago, YouTube first launched this thing, or Google did launch this thing called Google Podcast. And that was their effort to better integrate audio into its search product on Google search. And today that's actually a thing. You can type something in on Google, and Google Podcast transcribes the episodes for search capability. But that project went quiet after a little while. And in the meantime, a lot of popular podcasters started publishing their podcasts to YouTube anyway, including people like Joe Rogan, Logan Paul, H3H3, and sometimes little clips from their podcast, sometimes just a full 3 hours right there. Boom, right there on YouTube for you. And then things started getting a little interesting more recently. The YouTube Music app in Canada started supporting free background music listening. Normally, you had to pay for that with YouTube Premium. It's $11.99 a month, which is absolutely worth it, in my opinion. And every strategist here who spends their life on YouTube is like, yes, that is absolutely worth it. But they removed the ads and everything. But it's curious that they're experimenting with that offer for free on YouTube Music in Canada. Google said last year that 15% of the people who listen to music on YouTube did so in the background. So that background feature is pretty important. And we also know that YouTube already sells audio-only ads for those types of listeners who are listening to that content in the background. So YouTube already has this infrastructure, and they already have the advertising, the monetization model. Okay. Then in this past May, YouTube started testing listening controls, not viewing controls, listening controls, which provides, which might not be their language for it, but it provides a dedicated music player interface in the main YouTube app with 10-second forwards and rewind buttons. Those types of features don't make a whole lot of sense for like listening to music. They probably make more sense for listening to podcasts though, right? Like, do you skip forward 10 seconds, reverse 10 seconds when you listen to music? Probably not as much as you would if you're doing a podcast, right? So then this year, we see on the YouTube side, you guys have heard us talk about this before, that YouTube introduces video chapters, and then they automated the video chapters to be automatic video chapters, which allow people to now easily jump to different sections of a longer video. And we've also seen those different video segments ranking in Google search as well. Then on September 15th, just, couple months or like 2 months ago now, YouTube launched its own audio podcast on YouTube called The Upload, The Rise of the Creator Economy. And where are they putting their own audio podcast? Of course, on YouTube. Right. So it's interesting that YouTube is now doing, like, the official YouTube brand is doing their own audio only podcast on long form content on YouTube. And it's just the normal audiogram thing that you would expect to see. If you want to check it out, put a link to it in the show notes here. You can go check out their audio podcast on YouTube. But found that fascinating. In my mind, I'm like, oh, I think they're doing this maybe to test it. So they have their own metrics they can look at. I mean, they can see anyone's metrics on YouTube, but as a way of evaluating some of this a little bit further. And it's a good podcast. They're interviewing YouTube creators who have turned their channels into successful careers. So you can go check that out if you want. Now, I guess a little bit more interesting. A few weeks ago, a Google spokesperson confirmed to The Verge that they hired Kai Chuck to, quote, manage the large volume of existing podcasts and relationships across the YouTube platform, end quote. So they have intentionally hired one person to oversee this entire thing, right? And I can't. I probably shouldn't have put myself in this position. There's other things coming too that will be really exciting that I've had an opportunity to see, and so YouTube is making an effort behind podcasts here. Okay, so what's happening in the podcasting industry that's capturing YouTube's attention and getting them to make some of these moves? Because the truth is, like, YouTube generated about $20 billion in revenue last year, whereas the entire podcasting industry combined only like it barely, I don't even think it broke the $1 billion mark. So why is it that YouTube and Spotify now, like a lot of YouTube's competitors are jumping in? Spotify has spent billions of dollars buying podcasting shows, buying podcasting companies, getting exclusive rights to podcast content. And now Spotify is really diving into video podcasts now. Amazon is working on a podcasting audio app that would integrate better with Alexa and a lot of their platforms, as well as Apple, of course, has been doing podcasting for a long time. They just upped after years, it was like a decade of like no significant updates to their podcasting app. Now they've renamed it. Now they're putting better analytics behind it and selling subscriptions to podcasts. Like Apple's really getting into this. So why? Well, I think from what I could tell, we are in the beginning of like podcasting's about to take off big. We're at the beginning of like YouTube in 2008 type of thing. Like it's been around for a couple of years, for a while, but it is slated. The podcast industry is slated to double next year in terms of revenue. Okay. So there's a lot of energy going into this, and a lot of people trying to be first, get on the ground floor of this. So what does that mean for us as creators? You know, if we have a podcast, what should be our next moves concerning our YouTube channel? Is it time to start a podcast? Is it time to maybe move our podcast to YouTube from someplace else? Should we put it on the same channel? Should we put it on a different channel? Should they be audio only, or should they be video podcasts? I am really excited for today's conversation with Lennon and Delana, two of the strategists here on our team, because we're going to answer some of these questions. And I do think that a lot of this has significant implications for how YouTube, for how we craft our content on YouTube. But a lot of what YouTube is doing to craft their product will have an impact on our own content strategy as well. Lennon and Delana, good to see you guys again. It's fun to hang out you guys here in these podcast episodes. Delana, what's going on in the Hunt Hut? Did I say it right?
We're about to get our bathroom. Yeah. Hunt Hut.
Hunt Hut. That's a mouthful.
We're about to get our bathroom remodeled, so that's really exciting. It's going to be we're going to have a bigger shower, which is so exciting. Like that just makes such a difference. And I found out that I'm allergic to like 1 million foods this week, so that's fun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But mostly foods? What?
1 million?
That's 1 million exactly. Yeah. So it's been quite fun. Mild allergies mostly. Otherwise, I think I would have known that I'm allergic to them by now. But I only had one severe reaction to a Brazil nut. But that's been quite interesting in my life recently. I'm changing a lot of my dietary habits. So, you'd think it's kind of fun. Like, oh, yeah, like these, like some of my friends are like, oh, you have challenges with like trying to find, and I'm at this point where like it used to be fun. I was like, okay, I have to be creative with what I eat. And now I'm like, I'm over it. You know, so, but it feels really good to have a direction, like to know what's what, you know?
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, congratulations on all the allergies. I think you scored like 100%. It sounds like
yeah,
a million.
I think I definitely passed that test.
Yeah. How about you, Lennon? What's going on in the Lennon Bone abode?
Well, guys, I think after listening to this podcast episode, I think I'm going to get my kids to all start their own podcast episode as well. We're going to put them on YouTube.
Put it on YouTube, of course. Yeah. Yes.
And, I just want to really lean into this Podpocalypse 2022 while there's time. So, yeah, I mean, we're doing good. You know, we recently had Halloween, and we've never had a neighborhood with our kiddos where we felt like excited about the neighborhood, like actually having neighbors that we really enjoy. And so on Halloween, it was really cool because we were kind of cleaning up the house, and then all of a sudden we look out the window and almost the entire neighborhood of like kids and parents were coming to our house to pick us up so that we could all go like trick-or-treating together. So it was just this
I thought you were saying they were all coming to your house for your candy, and you're like,
we'll
have enough.
No, it was like, so they're like,
the best candy.
That's right. So they just kind of swooped in and said, hey, join us. And so we just all kind of lumped in together. So it was like it was like a growing mass of people. I was like, it felt like a New Orleans parade or something. It was really fun. And then we had like a bonfire afterwards at one of the neighbors' houses. And it just felt really good to have community in the neighborhood. And I know that some people like just have that, but that's not normal for us. And so that's been that's been a big blessing for our family, honestly. So that's been feeling grateful about that stuff.
Yeah. Our old neighborhood we lived in, normal, 0.29 acres on our HOA neighborhood. And we lived there for a few years and barely talked to any of the neighbors. Not because we were trying to avoid them, it's just inaccessible. But then here, now we have got a couple acres, and we hang out with our neighbors, come and babysit. We do have meals together. We hang out all the time, like all the neighbors around us. It really does make a really big difference
it's super nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. The big thing going on here in the Schmoyer Foyer is that I bought 2 parakeets this weekend. When I was a kid, I had a parakeet that was like my best friend, basically. Like this little bird flew around with me everywhere. I didn't fly. It flew. It followed me around everywhere and hung out on my shoulder when I was doing like my homework, and just poop all over my hair. Just, it was fun times. And our kids are like, we want an indoor pet, because we've got outdoor cats, we've got outdoor chickens and stuff, but they wanted indoor. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing a dog, we're not doing indoor cats, but we can do birds. So we got 2 of them, and they've been fun. They're not trained to step up on our fingers and follow us around and fly around the house and hang out with us like my bird was when I was a kid, but they're only 2 months old. We'll get them there, so it'll be.
You got a pair of parakeets.
Random poo droppings all over the house pretty soon.
Yeah, I had a parakeet when I was a kid. I thought it was super fun. I think for kids, especially, like just having a bird is such an interesting thing. But then I also had a roommate who had a cockatiel, and I just was ready to like strangle that freaking thing. It was awful.
Yeah, I named him Pilot and Blue. So I was going for you and Tube, maybe, or Pip and Peep. My wife was like, no. So I was like, okay. So I'm like, they're my birds. I paid for them with my blow money. So like, back off. No, it was good.
Just for the listeners at home, when Tim says blow money, he means money that he can just get rid of. It has nothing to do with drugs.
That's right.
You guys.
Yeah. Dana and I each get $25 a month of blow money, and it does accumulate does roll over. Thank you. Thankfully. So I hadn't spent mine in like a year. So I was like, all right, I got like $360 here. So
you got
my blow money.
You had enough for the whole shebang, like the cage and everything.
Yeah, I got it all, I got the bird's hand raised off of someone on Craigslist and the cage used off of Facebook Marketplace. So yeah, we got.
That's awesome.
And it's your blow money, man. You got to make that stretch. You only got 25 bucks a month, I recently had a consultation with a guy named Morgan Gold about his YouTube channel. In fact, we have been meeting, I think, every year for the past 4 years. And he just books a session and he's like, okay, here's what you told me to do last year. Here's what I did. Here's where it got me. What do I do now in this next year? And those are really fun to have, like those ongoing types of conversations. When he just got started, he was at I think he was under 100 subscribers on YouTube. Here we are 4 years later. And this last conversation we had, he was like, dude, I could go full time on this. This channel's making more money than my full-time job does, but I love my full-time job, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And so it was a really fun conversation to have. And I asked him at the end of that session, I was like, what did you do to get the channel to this point? If you're going to give advice to other creators who are like, I would love to get my channel to that point where it's generating more money than I could make in a employment, real job type of situation. That's what I asked him. And he had some insightful responses that I think will be helpful for you too. I always love hanging out with you, Morgan. It's always good conversations, good times, good stories. And I love your mission of what you're trying to do on your channel too for people. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the Cold Shell Farm.
Sure. So I'm a guy with zero agricultural experience. I grew up in the suburbs, but about 4 years ago, left a life in Washington, D.C. to start a farm in northern Vermont. And as I was starting the farm, I knew that I'd ultimately need to have a brand and an audience to sell my farm products to. So I decided to start documenting it on YouTube. And that's where I am today.
You started 4 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, about 3.5. Yeah.
3.5 years ago. And we had our first session, what was it, 2019?
I think it was August 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had 100 something subs back then.
145. I checked right before this meeting.
And here you are now, a couple of years later with a little over 350,000 subscribers. And you have the opportunity to go full time on it if you choose to make that choice. And for people who are kind of they want that goal for themselves, they're like, I would love to have enough income coming in, enough revenue, a big enough channel to have the potential to go full time on if I wanted to. What advice would you give them about how to get there?
The biggest thing is you got to love it, because if you want to try to grow a channel and you want to try to make sure that you're building an audience and connecting with your audience, you've got to love what you're talking about and what you're focused on. You've got to love communicating it and conveying it in the videos. And if you can do those things together and you actually enjoy that creation process, your audience is going to know, and you're going to build a relationship with folks. And I think that that's a huge part of what makes for successful channels.
One of the things I've seen you do is that you have been, we've met every year now for the past 4 years and kind of keep doing these check-ins. And every time I talked with you, you're like, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And I'd be like, okay, here's the new skill you need to learn. The more recent one being storytelling, right? And you're like, okay, got it. And then you go and you read all these books on storytelling, you dive in, you practice it. And I think you'll take this the right way. It's like a stumbling forward, like it is for all of us, right? And a lot of people, I think, have this expectation that this should just this is what I do. And the first attempt, boom, I nailed it, right? What would you say to someone out there who just feels like they're struggling and they hear some of the things we talk about in this podcast over and over again, and they're just like, it's not working for me, or what would be your response be for someone like that?
So I've always tried to cherish my failures. And, it's a big part of actually what my YouTube channel is about, where you see me failing over and over again to start a farm. But each time I'm failing, I'm learning something new and I'm finding a way to make myself better. When it comes to the YouTube stuff, it's the same thing. It's this idea that, okay, I'm not a good storyteller, or I'm awkward on camera and I don't know how to connect to an audience. Well, let me see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, I should stop doing that. I should try to find ways to be better. And so if you can be vulnerable and accept those flaws and embrace them and find ways to improve and learn from the things you've done in your past, you're going to be able to find success if you put in the work.
Yeah. When you fail forward and you show those mistakes, do you feel like that hurts your credibility and your reputation with your audience?
No,
it feels
I don't.
Vulnerable, doesn't it?
Look, it's definitely vulnerable. I don't feel like it hurts my credibility at all because I never try to put myself as an expert. I never try to say, you should trust me because I'm the guy who knows everything about ducks or geese or trees or whatever. It's, hey, I'm a guy who just started doing this. I've been learning a lot. I've been trying my best. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what's working for me. Here's what's not working for me. You could try it too if you haven't tried it before, or if you are doing it, maybe here's something you want to learn from. And so I never try to position myself as an expert because I feel like that's the first step towards having people not find you credible.
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of people, especially in the educational space, they are trying to make videos that position themselves as the expert so that you'll hire me or buy from me or something. And what you're doing is the opposite, which is like, I show my failures, my weaknesses, the things I'm struggling with, because that humanizes me. And thus people know, like, and trust me more. And when they have, then they'll buy from me, then they'll be more likely to engage with my content because they feel like I'm a real person rather than just like some guru.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people try to differentiate themselves on expertise. When for me, I think it's actually much more important to differentiate yourself on honesty and passion. I care about what I do. And I think folks know that. And by caring, I think that's what actually builds a relationship with your audience versus, oh, this is the smartest guy in the room, because most people don't like the smartest guy in the room.
Well, I'll leave then. No, I'm kidding. No, I really respect what you're doing. You hustle, you grind, you push, you work really hard. And all the non-sexy side of YouTube that goes into like that people don't see behind the scenes, that's what you're doing. And every year when we check in to do this meeting, I'm like, yeah, he's worked really hard and he's developed these skills. He's taken them to the next level. And we talk about a few other things here in this session, you know, that maybe another year from now, we pass that 1 million mark and with some of these ideas. So I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. And if you guys want to check out his channel, there's a link down in the show notes to put it down there, following along with his story and see how he's taking what most people would consider like education and how he's telling a really engaging story around it. So go check it out. Link down there. If you're an expert in your industry, I think is really important to try focusing less on being an expert and more on being a human. Like that is who the audience naturally connects with, not someone who does everything perfect, but someone who's like, oh, okay, like this person understands me. And not to say like if you're a brain surgeon, you should show all your mistakes about your brain surgery, but there's probably some place where you could risk some vulnerability and create that human connection. So I think that's a really, really good point. So I would love to connect with you in a one-on-one consultation and help you understand what's next. If you really want to take your channel to the next level, you can go to videocreators.com/consulting. You'll enter in some notes there, find a spot in my schedule that works, go through the booking form and block off that time on my calendar. And then I'm going to look at those notes. I'm going to look at your channel and I'm going to come prepared to help you just remove the friction that's preventing you from getting the goals that you really want on your channel, whether that's growing your online business or growing the subscribers or viewership or average views per video, or like whatever it is you're trying to do, we'll come with some tactics and strategies to help you do that. That's custom for your channel and your audience and your goals. So go to videocreators.com/consulting and book a session with us here today. I'd love to talk with you soon. Well then, Delana, what's your initial reaction to everything I just kind of mentioned in the opening episode about podcasting on YouTube? Is this all one big conspiracy theory, or do you think that there's something here? What's your?
I hope it's a conspiracy theory. I hope it is. That's way more fun.
Here at Video Creators, we live off of the conspiracy theories.
That's right. I'm just aching for something to like flip me over. You know what I mean?
Well, we have a team we haven't really talked about that much in terms of podcasting on YouTube. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys think about all that.
I'm excited.
Go for it.
I'm excited because I do not like Apple Podcasts navigation. I think it's a really, really frustrating app to try to navigate. So I listen to, and I mean, most of my time, even before I had this job, was spent on YouTube anyway. So it's like, it's just natural for me to get that kind of entertainment there. Like, and whenever I say that kind of entertainment, I mean like connecting with an online creator. So I'm super excited that they're starting to focus on podcasting more, because that's how I already use that podcast is on YouTube. So I think if I'm using YouTube for that purpose, then probably a lot of other people are too. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I think it's interesting because when I look at kind of what you talked about here in the beginning, which is this ecosystem that YouTube's really building, right? They were the first to sort of have longer form content that like connected with viewers on a deeper level. TikTok comes in and sort of spurs this like shorts movement. And now, you know, YouTube is like, okay, now how can we lean further into podcasting, which, you know, granted, like Spotify had done, but that makes sense. They're an audio only platform, right? And when I look at like the potential for YouTube's ecosystem versus everybody else, like they have the most opportunity, I feel like, because when you start with, I think, the most powerful thing, which is longer form video as the connector for creators directly to their audience, and then you just enlarge that through short form and even longer form content, like the opportunity there as a creative becomes just insane, because you can't do that anywhere else, right? So I just think it's going to be really neat to see how they start to tie all these things together, because we're already seeing like the way that they've pulled shorts off into their own part of the app. And it's like you mentioned in terms of chapters and all these things, it's like we can't tell fully like what's happening, but you know that it's on their brain. Like, how do we make like the penultimate, everything exists in this one space? And that is really fascinating to me.
Usually in the past, when YouTube tries to do a lot of things, and not just YouTube, I guess the challenge for any app or program or business in general is like the more things you try to do, the more confusion it tends to introduce. And we have seen that happen many times with different launches at YouTube. I feel like they did a good job at like attempting to layer the shorts product over top of their existing platform. It's not perfect. I think they'll get it. It'll improve over time. But now it looks like, to your point, Lennon, they'll be doing something similar with audio-based podcasting content now. Maybe they'll call it YouTube Longs. I don't know. But just like this long form, or maybe YouTube Pants. Maybe that's what they'll call it.
I think that's
long
exactly. You get them on the phone.
Maybe like capris, YouTube capris.
Maybe YouTube capris. Yeah. with keys or sandals. Yeah. Is there? Hell, that
one got me. That was a good one.
It's like, we're not shorts, we're not longs, we're just kind of like
somewhere in the middle.
Crab wading pants or something. Yeah. So is there anything that we've learned about layering YouTube shorts on top of our existing YouTube channels and content that you think maybe we should consider when thinking about layering now our podcasts on top of our existing content as well? Or not really? Or is it too soon to tell?
I have seen creators have a bit of frustration. It doesn't happen too commonly, but some creators that I work with have had some frustration in like their shorts. They're posting shorts and the shorts content just basically loses subscribers rather than goes anywhere. And that's primarily coming from the subscription feed. You know, they're not on a short shelf. It's that they're showing up in the subscription feed. I personally think that YouTube needs to not show shorts in a subscription feed, but I don't know exactly what that solution would be. But that's what I'm thinking for podcasts as well, is that it's a different format in which the viewer is consuming content. And unless viewers get used to, consuming content in multiple different formats from creators pretty quickly, then we are going to see, I think, some of that turnover because of its longer form. and there's probably not going to be a ton of editing like there is in other content. Like they'll edit appropriate things out, but I mean, what's the average length of a podcast? Like 30 minutes to an hour in there. So
yeah, it could be. Yeah. I mean, they range obviously pretty significantly, but yeah. I'm trying to look through my notes. So one of the moves that YouTube made that's already out there is they have a chip. There's a chip. You guys know what I mean by chips? Like at the top, they have like these little filters you can just tap. It's like a little like circle oval thing. It'll be like more from this creator, or show me something new, or if you're like searching for something, it'll just give you some other suggestions, ideas. You can just tap. They added a new one. I can't remember if it's called podcast or if it's called audio based or audio only or something like that, but it is I should have looked it up before we got in here, but it's basically a filter that's already out there where you can be like, no, I'll just show me just podcast episodes. Basically, that's all I'm into. I'm just listening in the background tab or background mode of my phone if I have YouTube Premium or something. That's all I want. So they're making it easier for people who want that type of content to filter it out and only only see that in their feed, which, to your point, like Estelina, like that's primarily how you consume your podcast is on there. And so they're making it easier for you to do that. So this isn't like an afterthought for YouTube. They're like, no, we got to make it easy for people to find just this type of audio-based content. You could be a video podcast, but let's be honest, like 98% of the value is just in the audio, not in sitting here looking at me and my microphone and Lennon scratch his face and Selena swivel in her chair, right? Like that's not the value. It's just in the audio, but it does. I do think the video makes some sense. So for YouTube, obviously, when I think about like, what do we learn about layering this? I think there's a couple of things that come to mind for me, like layering audio-based content on top of our YouTube normal content. And it is that one of the problems people ran into with shorts was like, hey, this is a different format that is so different that if I publish it on this channel, my audience is like, what the heck? And then they unsubscribe, they complain, they leave. And that was why then people started creating shorts channels, or why people now today create podcast channels or things that are separate from because it's just so different. I'm hoping that as YouTube continues to develop their podcasting product, that and content like shorts and on-demand content can now exist on the same channel better together. I'm hoping that it forces people to think less about their format of their quality and more about the value proposition and the target audience they're trying to reach. So that it becomes less of like, oh, I'm a family blogger, or I'm a gamer, or I do guitar tutorials, and less about like it forces people to focus less on the format and more on the value, to the point where I can subscribe to a channel and I might not have an hour to listen to that podcast from that new channel I subscribe to, because I really subscribe from their on-demand stuff or for their short stuff. But I can see how it's still equally as valuable to me as their shorts or as their on-demand stuff. It's just I don't have time for that right now. I don't think that'll hurt the channel because YouTube ranks videos individually. Each video performs separately from the others on the channel. So I think when YouTube starts learning which audience wants which of your channel wants what, they'll get better at just recommending that too. And they're already giving people some quick tools that once people understand how to use those tools, they just tap the audio-based content chip, for example, and then they'll just see everything that they just want. So I don't know. I think hopefully that it forces us to think more in terms of value than in terms of content format.
It's exciting for me. I think because I think about someone like Wheezy Waiter, whom I think is super funny, and he's got these sort of sanctions of his personality split off into all these different channels. And I'm like, sometimes it's frustrating because I'm like, I wish this was all in just one spot, so it's easier for me to kind of get to those things. But I understand why he did that for exactly the reasons we're discussing here. So it's exciting to think about the potential of having, like you said, a value proposition housed under these different content buckets, if we want to call it that. So could be cool. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be really neat.
Yeah, we already have the short shelf, right? So maybe we'll get the podcast shelf, maybe. So because they're separating those formats out for us in some ways already. What do you think? Like, we should be considering as creators for podcasting? Should this be a part of our overall content strategy on YouTube, or not really? Or is this like, when should a creator maybe start thinking about podcasting? Is it now the time to get into it? Or maybe it doesn't make sense? Yeah, just what are your reactions to when a creator should consider podcasting?
Yeah, I think you should really only consider it if it's a strength. And when I say it's a strength, I mean the ability to hold someone's attention at length, sort of on the fly, right? If that's not your strong suit, don't do it. And I think that's also like a cool thing that's starting to happen with YouTube, is that what we're seeing is, even in this scenario, you may be like, I'm really freaking good at making 60-second videos. Then you have an opportunity to grow on YouTube. Or I'm really good at making 7-minute long videos that tell a great story or educate someone really well. Then you can grow on YouTube. And now here's just another opportunity to do that, to play off your strength. So, while we may see that a lot of people have, a lot of the big creators have like a podcast and a regular thing and doing all the things, I don't think it's necessary for someone to grow on YouTube to do all of the things. I think you start by leaning into your strengths and then build from there. Your silence speaks volumes, guys. Yeah, thanks.
No, that's fine.
No, we got the clip, you guys. You heard it. They don't care. They don't agree.
Yeah, podcasting, not only to your skills, but I think it fits really well as like a community play on your channel. So many people are just thinking of discoverable, and podcasts can be discoverable. Just because it's an hour long doesn't mean that someone really wants to go in depth into that thing. But I think of it more in terms of like, this is an opportunity to talk about things more in depth and longer than we otherwise would. And build a stronger human connection with our audience and be able to grow that relationship. And so in terms of like our 3-bucket strategy with discoverable content, community content, and sales content, if nothing else, podcasting, I think, is a really strong tool for going deeper and building the human elements, parts of your brand and your content stronger than you could have done in just, even a 10-minute video. Not all the time, but I do think it's something to consider for that. When do you guys think like creators should start publishing their podcast to YouTube? If they already have a podcast, should they start now? Or is that something that they should wait for this product to become more fully developed and then dive into it? Or in terms of timelines, what do you think creators should be considering?
It's so funny because like you ask these questions and then I'm like, what if we give somebody the wrong answer right now? I'm going to go ahead and say you should do it. I think you should. If you have it, you should do it. Because I just don't see the point in not, mostly because we talk about this idea of, yes, discoverability is your option. There's also a sense of developing a deeper relationship with your audience. Is there a risk of losing subscribers? Yes, there is. But I don't know that the risk of losing those subscribers is worth like the cost of the potential gain that you can get by going deeper with the right people.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here. I agree. Like, I'm starting to invest into turning our audio podcast into video. You guys who don't know this yet, but Len and Delana and I have been recording video versions of all of our podcasts for the past 6 episodes, maybe something like that. And we haven't published any of them on YouTube yet, but we are working with our video editor to be like, here's a really long conversation. How would you turn this into something visually stimulating for YouTube? And it's not going to be anything fancy. It's just like basically our videos here together, and that's kind of going to be it. Like you can see us talk.
Hold on. If you got Delana and I on here, it's fancy. Okay, like let's be real.
Well, you guys will be the thumbnail, no doubt, right? But yeah, and then the other advantage of this is it makes it easier to do like repurpose your podcast for other platforms that are usually video based. So when you have the video, it's stronger than just doing like an audiogram with like the waveform bouncing and some captions going. So I think it'll help us with that as well. So yeah, we got some challenges to overcome in terms of like, what does that video intro look like, and in segments and transitions and things. So we're going to get it worked out. I think we're getting pretty close, and we're starting some podcast episodes of ours lend themselves to video and segments easier than others, but we are experimenting with that. And if you're watching the video version of this now, I apologize because my camera keeps turning off for some reason. But if in the audio, you don't know and you don't care. But I've been doing the same thing with my personal podcast too, my business, family, marriage podcast with Tim Schmoyer, of course, and only me. I did that one for me in order to work. This is, I think, the downside of turning it into something on YouTube is the workflow becomes it triples as soon as you add video to it. Because when it was audio, like I was just doing it on my phone. Literally, like it was just like, if this is going to work, I got to just do it like wherever I'm at. I'm just going to record it on my phone, me processing some thoughts about business development and leadership, organizational leadership and business and family and in marriage. Now that I did a video version of it, I kind of had to be like, okay, I just can't be out anywhere. And I just held my phone and still did it on my phone with a video. But now the instead of me just recording it into an app and hitting publish, which I was using Anchor.fm for that, now I've got to like record it and edit it a little bit and, add like this intro bumper and this outro bumper and stuff or video, which I'm using Adobe Rush to do. And then just exporting the audio separately from that video. And putting it up on the youtube.com/Tim Schmoyer YouTube channel. And I do see better engagement on that video version there of the podcast than I do on the audiogram podcast versions I was posting there before. So it did significantly increase the time and that it takes to do it. I'm banking on the fact that that'll be worth it one day, but we'll see. I'm kind of like, YouTube's going this direction. Let's start putting our podcast there now and be early rather than like late and waiting for everything to be perfect. Yeah. I'd rather them launch something and then we already have our content there ready for it than trying to catch up later.
So do you have to do anything different to upload it as a podcast video?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't been. I've just been uploading it as a normal video. And I think YouTube can see like, hey, it's just a guy sitting in his chair, not really moving for 35 minutes straight. And he's like just talking. It looks like a podcast.
Tim looks real bored here. I think this is a podcast.
I mean, every Joe Rogan video looks basically the same visually, right? Yeah. So I think YouTube will figure that out pretty quickly. I don't think there's anything you have to do with like a hashtag or anything, but might not hurt. I don't know. The other thing about YouTube podcasting I think is interesting. Again, if you have YouTube Premium, it's just like the Apple Podcast app or and the other podcasting apps out there. You can download those videos to your Apple or to your the YouTube app with Premium, so you can listen to them offline on demand later. So I do think like, the YouTube app is basically already a podcasting app. It's just not thought of that way. And it does need a few more features, but it's got the double speed already there. It's got the skip 10 seconds thing there. Subscribing is already there. So there's a lot of those elements already there. I think it's just a matter of giving us a few tools to kind of separate it out so that we can get to the content we want a little bit more easily versus shorts versus on demand versus audio based podcasting type of content. So I am, guys, really diving into this a lot more myself as a podcaster and as a YouTube creator. And so what I want to be doing here in a couple of weeks, a friend of mine, he's trained about half of the top 100 podcasters in the world. He has 7 podcasts himself. He's been doing this for about 15 years now, full time. And I met him in Vegas, but he happens to live 1.5 miles from me. Like he's almost literally my neighbor. And so we get together and have lunch and, hang out, which is always fun. But I asked him if he would join us for one of our episodes to talk more about how to create and grow a successful podcast. And when does it make sense for you to give your time to yet another thing like podcasting, and when does it not? And maybe he'll have some advice because he does YouTube videos as well for how to use that leverage podcast content specifically on YouTube. So I am scheduling him here hopefully the next couple of weeks to have that conversation. But in the meantime, I would love to have you submit your questions about podcasting and YouTube for that interview with him. So go to speak speakpipe.com/video creators and just record, a little audio clip of yourself asking a question that you would love for, his name's Cliff Ravenscraft, for Cliff and I to discuss about podcasting, whether it's how to start a podcast, how do I take videos and turn them into podcasts, or vice versa, or I don't know, whatever questions you have that come up for you as a result of this episode here of podcasting and YouTube, go to speakpipe, speakpipe.com/video creators. A link to that in the show notes as well. Submit your little audio question to us and we will feature them in that episode with Cliff, and you'll get answers directly from him about that. So next week in our Q&A, we have a Q&A episode. You guys, the audience, you've been leaving some really good questions for us lately, and we're going to hit up some of those in our episode next week. So if you have any other questions to ask, you can obviously do that too, the same link, but we'll give this podcasting guy some good podcasting questions from you as well. So, all right. And we'll talk about how to move forward specifically with your podcast on YouTube. But first, next week, some Q&A. Every week, we like to end these episodes with a power tip, something practical that you can take and do on your channel right now and see some results. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't done this already, to try a live stream. It's basically like a real-time podcast. You don't need to keep it on your channel forever. You can just literally get the YouTube app on your phone, log into your channel, and hit that go live icon right there at the bottom, click the little plus sign, and just stream right from your phone. Don't need special equipment. Don't need to set anything up. And the reason I think that this would be a really good power tip for you is it's helpful to learn what is it like to interact and talk with your audience real time in terms of a live stream. And then I want you to think about, what does that inspire for you on a podcasting level that's different from what you're already doing in your normal process of planning, shooting, editing, uploading a video. Podcasting is a totally different format for a totally different person, I found as well. And so I'd really love to encourage you to just the bare basic thing you need to do is just do a live stream from your phone, talk to those people, and then just reflect on that later. I would probably unlist it if it's your first time. You don't have to keep it public unless you thought it was awesome, then keep it there. But just do that for your power tip and try live stream. And if you haven't podcasted before, consider that your first real-time podcast. In the meantime, we'll see you guys again next week for our Q&A episode. Looking forward to diving into your questions then. We're going to talk a lot about attracting the right audience, about multiple topics in a single video, storytelling with videos that don't normally have a story, and a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll see you guys then.